For 2 weeks, I've been using the Pixel 10 Pro XL as my main phone. I sold my iPhone 16 Pro, so this is it. This is my daily driver. It's been both positive and negative, and in some ways, unexpected. To start, let's talk battery. I'm using the Pixel 10 Pro XL, which has a pretty decent sized battery at 5200 mAh. The first few days with any smartphone are kind of a mixed bag when it comes to battery, because the phone is just kind of settling into being set up. Pixels have what they call adaptive battery, which kind of does what it says, optimizing the battery life based on your usage. So for the first few days, my battery life was good. Not great, but good. After that settling time, my battery has been fantastic. I've been able to make it through a day super easily, with my battery ending off just under 50%. Something I found is that apps that would chew through battery on my iPhone did really next to nothing on the Pixel. Like if I stream an F1 race on my iPhone, it's really not unheard of for it to use up over 50% of the battery. On the Pixel, I watched the entire Italian F1 Grand Prix, and I think I used maybe about 15 or 20% of my whole battery. The Pixel 10 Pro XL does charge faster than the smaller size 10 Pro, but honestly, I never found that I needed to worry about fast charging. I would typically just plug my phone in overnight, and the Pixel has what it calls adaptive charging. So it looks at the time that you have your alarm set for, and trickle charges the phone all the way up to 100%, so that it's ready to go as soon as you wake up. I know it's maybe not the only phone to do something like this, but I really love all the smart software stuff that Google does to help optimize this phone. The build of this year's phone looks very similar to last year, like nearly identical. The camera bar is the slightest bit different, but it's millimeters. The body is made from aluminum with these glossy sides, and it looks super nice, though this does pick up fingerprints quite easily. I got the phone in Moonstone, which has a subtle blue color. The shape and the feel of the phone in hand feels very familiar. It's very iPhone-like, which is a good thing. The back is a matte frosted glass, which feels great and avoids fingerprints pretty well. I really like the contrast between the frosted glass and the shiny G Google logo on the back. Very minimal and premium in appearance. I also really like the look of the camera bar, and I appreciate the fact that the phone doesn't wobble when it's laying flat on a table. I also find that the camera bar is a comfortable place for me to put my finger when I'm holding onto the phone. Now, I just need to take a moment and say thank you, Google, for seemingly fixing the fingerprint sensor on this phone. The fingerprint sensor has been a real struggle for me to use on all the prior models, but this time around, it's nearly flawless. I've been really happy with the display in general. It's vibrant and colorful, and it's able to get just past 3000 nits of peak brightness out in bright sunlight. If you didn't hear, Google basically added MagSafe to the Pixel. They call it Pixel Snap, but it's basically just MagSafe. That's been super awesome to have coming from the iPhone to this phone, especially because at this point I have an entire MagSafe ecosystem in places like my car, on my bike, and that's made the whole transition that much easier. Now at the end of the day, this phone has a front and back that are glass, and a side that's made of aluminum, all of which have a chance of denting or breaking if you drop your phone. Personally, I want to protect my phone without adding too much bulk to it. So Benks sent over their ArmorAir case, which is super thin at 1mm and also super light at 21.8 grams. The case comes in the pattern called Aurora, which is inspired by the Aurora Borealis, and matches the moonstone color of the Pixel 10 Pro really well. Now, a case this thin might seem intimidating to install, but watch this. The easiest way to do this is to slide your phone in from the left where there aren't buttons, and then press your phone in on the right side. Once your phone is in the case, it doesn't come off unless you really want it to. This is one of the only thin cases I know of that has slightly raised corners. This helps to keep your phone screen protected if you're laying your phone face down on a surface like a table, even if you have a screen protector. This case also has good protection for your camera lenses thanks to this machined aluminum ring. This case also has strong Pixel Snap magnets built into its Kevlar body. Now, if Kevlar sounds familiar, that's because it's a strong and heat-resistant material that's both used in body armor for law enforcement as well as the protective cell of modern Formula One cars. So you can sleep well at night knowing that your phone is protected by that same material. If you'd like to pick up this case, I'll leave a link down in the description along with any discounts that I can get my hands on. Thanks again to Benks for sending over this case and for sponsoring the video. Now for me, whenever I think of a Google Pixel, I think of cameras. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that every year Marquez has been running his blind smartphone test, one of the Pixel models has been the winner. For the past 2 weeks, I've just been using this phone how I would use any smartphone, so I haven't been going out of my way to use all the different little features of the camera. A more in-depth camera test and comparison is something that'll be coming up in a future video, so subscribe if you want to see that. What I've found is that all the camera controls are laid out quite well and feel pretty familiar for someone who might be coming from another phone, like an iPhone. When you get into the camera settings and start making changes, the UI does a pretty good job at explaining why you might not have access to a certain feature. I really like that you can just go to the camera settings within the camera app itself. You don't have to go digging through the actual settings of the phone. But if you do need those, you can press these 3 dots over here and jump straight into all the in-depth camera settings. One thing that's thrown me off a little bit is the time it takes to see the results of my photos. Whenever you take a picture with this camera, there's this 1 to 3 second waiting period while the phone processes the photo you just took. Now, if you're out just taking a bunch of pictures one after another and not checking them immediately, you'll never see this. Those photos would process in the background, and when you go to look at them, they'd all be ready to go. But I'm someone who generally likes to take a look at the photo after I've taken it, so this is kind of weird for me. What I don't personally really love is this newly marketed 100 times super res zoom. All this is really doing is taking your super zoomed in photo, running it through some AI processing, and then giving you an AI interpretation of what it thinks that photo is. I want my photo to be something that I took, not an interpretation of it. Maybe that's just me, and you might feel differently. This is definitely a rabbit hole of a topic. Like, where do you draw the line? I think I'm personally a bit more okay using AI to remove maybe a random person in the background or a random object like a pylon from my photo. So I guess where I draw the line is when AI is affecting the actual subject of the photo I took. Like, check this out. This is the Calgary Tower, taken from super far away, and after it processes, it just looks weird. I don't know, what is a photo anymore? Get in the comments, let me know what you think. As far as videos go, I've taken some, and I've been pretty happy with the results. If you have nothing to compare it to, then I think you'd be pretty happy with what you get. As far as the software experience goes, all the navigation and everything is pretty similar to what you'd get from an iPhone, which for me is great. It all feels super familiar. You have an app drawer, which is just on the bottom instead of over to the side. You have this bar at the bottom that you use to swipe out of apps. You do kind of a half movement up and swipe back and forth to be able to switch between apps, and swipe up to close them if you want, which you don't have to do. Just let the phone manage itself. I like to have my phone set up super minimally, where I search down here for the apps I want and just leave the core ones that I access all the time right on my screen. So for me, the navigation of using the software has been pretty seamless because at this point, the competitors are very similar. Now, over the last year or so, there's been a lot of progress made with messaging between Android and iPhone. RCS on iPhone has been out for just about a year, and it's improved a lot. Over these 2 weeks, I've definitely still gotten a couple who's the green bubble messages, but because all the things that I'm sending are in high quality and the group messages aren't breaking, nobody's really persistently complaining. On my end at least, things like replying to messages and reactions with emojis, they all work totally fine. Something that's maybe lesser known, but I like to use, is the ability to use the Messages app on here in a web browser. It was super easy to set up, and then I had a similar experience to what it would be like having iMessage across my ecosystem of Apple products. So honestly, not having iMessage hasn't been the deal breaker that it's been in the past. There is still one silly deal breaker for me, so get your fingers warmed up because we'll talk about that pretty shortly. Android 16 with the newly polished updates is a really nice operating system. Everything's clean, minimal, easy to navigate, and generally intuitive. I really like how easily I can interact with notifications to do simple things like mark messages as read. One thing I wish Pixel software had the ability to do was have a notification number instead of a dot. I've done a lot of Googling and digging through all the settings, but it doesn't seem to be something that exists on the Pixel software experience. If it is something I missed and you are using a Pixel, you can let me know in the comments how to change this. Since I don't have the ability to just glance and know how many emails are in my inbox, what I've found is that it's way more tricky to stay on top of or have a real awareness of what's going on within my email inboxes. This is a bit of a bigger deal because a lot of what I do for work now relies on me emailing back and forth with brands, and I really strive to keep my inbox at 0. Something else I've noticed is that the app experience on Android is just honestly not as polished and good as it is on iOS. For work, I often use apps like Notion, Dropbox, and Adobe Express. And over the last 2 weeks, I've kind of lost track of the amount of times that apps like Adobe Express and Dropbox have just frozen up and stopped working properly. I try and be as patient as I can with it, but at times just gets to a point where I go and grab my iPad to do the task I need to do. Using Notion has been pretty good, but there's this weird quirk where voice to text dictation is not really working properly in that app, which kind of sucks because that's the easiest way that I can get my thoughts down to create a video like this. So yeah. Just little quirks here and there that I'm not used to dealing with coming from my old phone. It's only been 2 weeks, and there is troubleshooting that I could do, and there could be updates put out from developers to make all of this a non-issue. So, let's talk about those deal breakers I mentioned. The first is something that might be so silly for a lot of you, but I know there are others out there that can relate. Hi Spencer. It's the calendar. Now, let's say you're single or you've just always used Google Calendar. this is not an issue for you. But for me, and I emphasize for me, as a husband and a dad with 2 kids who have varying doctor's appointments and events that we have to go to, the iCloud calendar experience that Apple has built is incredible. My wife and I have multiple shared calendars, and when either of us adds an event to that calendar, the other person gets a notification immediately. It appears as a notification on your screen, but also as a little one in an inbox in the calendar app. Having little features like this just brings extra awareness to events that are being added and removed to the calendar. Yes, you can have shared calendars in other apps that work pretty close to this, but it's specifically how this app notifies the other person that I haven't been able to find or replicate anywhere else. And yes, it's largely to do with the fact that it's linked to our Apple IDs and shows up across all our devices and just works so seamlessly. I know. Go yell in the comments if you want, but this has just been my personal experience. Maybe you're a dedicated iPhone user and you're watching this and you're like, yeah, I totally get it. I see you. Please also go comment to help me feel validated. So if you thought that was silly, here's another. It's the flashlight. When it's on, and there's no way to dim it. In a situation where I just want to check on my kid at night, it's super helpful to have a flashlight that I can dim super low versus having my flashlight on and kind of half covering it with my hand to not illuminate the entire room and potentially wake my kid up. If you can relate, again, please go give me validation in the comments. And if you think it's the silliest thing ever, you can let me know, but please, in a nice way. We're all human. No need to get super feisty in the comments. After all, we're just talking about cell phones. So after 2 weeks, I'm overall quite happy with the Pixel 10 Pro XL. If you are someone who's on the fence about moving from iPhone to Android, I think now is an easier time more than ever to make that jump. For myself, I'm going to continue using the Pixel 10 until September 19th when the new iPhones come out, because that's just part of my job and what I have to do. I will be keeping the phone and making more content about it in the future. And maybe I'll switch back over to it once the content season for the iPhone has settled down a bit. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and we'll do this again sometime. But I can't quite reach. Ugh.